right, here we go now, baby. The divisional round of the NFL playoffs going down this weekend. Joe and Jingles coming at you with our 9 total best bets for the 40 games. John Middlekauff will be joining us with his breakdowns and his takes on the latest news in the NFL in the second half of the program. Before we get into all the action, guys, make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button right down there. Now then, let us get right into the action. We got 3 separate props for Bills Broncos. Jingles, you're hitting leadoff. What do you have first?
RJ Harvey over 50 and a half rushing yards, minus 110. Time of recording here on Wednesday. The Jags didn't run the ball enough, and it was really frustrating, the play calling out of Jacksonville versus this Buffalo defense. They ran for 6.7 yards per carry in that game, but didn't run enough. Travis Etienne off tackle, 5 yards, 8 yards, 26 yards. Tootin goes 4 runs for 51 yards. In 3 consecutive plays, he went 20 yards off tackle right side, 14 yards off tackle right side, then goes 13 off tackle on the other side, all in the first quarter. How does he get rewarded? 1 more carry in the game, 4 yards up the middle. I think Denver's going to do a much better job of beating this defense with what it showed and the struggles that it has within the run. Also missing a few players at practice. Obviously, Tuesday was a walkthrough, so not 100%, but Maxwell was DMP. Jordan Poyer was DMP. Other starters limited as well. Harvey will see 70 to 75% of the RB opportunities. That was about his week 17 workload. He's coming in off fresh legs. Yes, he only averaged 3.5 yards per carry since week 13, but he needs just 15 carries to get over this short number versus a bad defense. Big gains coming off the tackle, especially off that right side for Harvey to kick things off in the divisional round, Joe.
Okay, I like a rushing prop as well. Going to target Bo Nix. Going to take the over on his number of 22 and a half over at FanDuel at the time of this recording. So great spot for him because he has been running wild in his last couple of games. Totals of 49 and 42 rushing yards on 17 total attempts over his last 2 games. And this is an excellent opponent for him to run wild against because the Buffalo Bills allow the 5th most rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks this season. And a handful of guys, or a trio of guys, I guess you could say, have been running wild on them down the stretch here. Last week, Trevor Lawrence took off for 31 rushing yards. Shedeur Sanders a couple weeks back went for 49 against them. Drake May went for 43 against them in his most recent game against Buffalo. It is worth noting, of course, these teams played in the playoffs last year. We know the Bills absolutely crushed them, but May had a good day on the ground. He ran for 43 yards, so pretty modest number, all things considered. I do expect Nix to make a couple of plays with his feet here, so give me the over on that number of 22 and a half. Okay, one last prop for this game. You're calling this a wide receiver teaser. Break it down for us.
Let's take a couple of wide receiver twos, knock their numbers down a bit on their all totals, get that at 20 yards. Pat Bryant, Brandon Cooks, 20 receiving yards each, minus 110. Start off on Bryant. He was running a lot of the wide receiver two stuff before going down with a neck injury week 16. He also missed week 18 with a hamstring injury, but he was second on the team in routes and took a lot of those Troy Franklin snaps back then. Had 30 targets in his last 5 games, ceiling of 5 catches, 3 plus catches, 30 plus yards in 5 straight games. His ceiling is low, and the time off will certainly help him correct his injury issues. Jumping over to Brandon Cooks. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills pass catchers are dropping like flies. Tyrell Shavers, ACL injury. Gabe Davis, ACL injury. Dalton Kincaid was in a boot after the game. Says he should be fine, but we'll see about that. And the Bills absolutely hate Keon Coleman. It was Cooks who got the air yards last week when he got it. 110 air yards on 5 targets, finished with 3 catches, 10, 12, 36, and had a 27-yard reverse. So a little wide receiver teaser, small numbers on wide receivers too. And it goes, if you run this up to 30 yards each, plus 230, 40 yards each, plus 460, and 50 yards each, that's 10 to 1, Joe.
Okay, to Saturday night, where we go, where the San Francisco 49ers will be in Seattle to take on the Seahawks. My best bet for this game, I'm going to take the under on the total of 45.5 over at DraftKings. So rock bottom scoring between these teams this season. They played 2 games in the regular season, of course. Both of those games stayed under 30 combined points, including just 2 weeks ago when the Seahawks went into San Francisco and they won that game 13-3. So 17 points or less for the 49ers in 3 straight now against the Seahawks, going back to last season, of course. And the Seahawks defense is in incredible form right now. They've held 5 of their last 6 opponents to 16 points or less. Really a tough spot here for the 49ers offense. A day short rest-wise. And one of their most important players, George Kittle, is out. They're not going to have him to catch passes, or an underrated part of his game, block. He's one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. So playmaker options are really drying up for San Francisco. Brock Purdy, pretty shaky in that game in Philadelphia with 2 ugly interceptions. Now he'll face a defense that he produced his worst game of the season against just back in week 18. On the other side, are you sure you trust Sam Darnold in a big spot? We know that was the narrative about him last season, carried into this season. Now, yes, they did win a couple big games down the stretch of the season. That one against the Rams, of course, the one in week 18 against the 49ers, but he did have some really ugly moments in those games. 2 games against the 49ers this season, he didn't reach 200 passing yards or throw for a touchdown in either of those games. And San Francisco defense, some pretty good momentum for them. Back-to-back games where they've held their opponent to under 20 points. 2 pretty big games as well. So we're going to go under 45.5 for the Saturday nighter. And for that Saturday nighter, you are betting somebody to get into the end zone. Who are you taking?
Let's go Zach Charbonnet for a touchdown, even money. And I think this is good down to like minus 125. Comes down to red zone work. Obviously, your 7.5 point favorite really helps, and you have an offense that runs the ball almost more than anybody else. But it is his red zone work that's really pushing this. Since week 12, 23 red zone carries to Walker's 9. Charbonnet has also converted 6 of those into TD, while Walker has converted 0. Volume, efficiency, and if you look inside the 5-yard line, he has them beat 8-1 in terms of carries. The last 2 games, which is even more telling, he's getting even better usage inside the 5, inside the 10, and inside the 20 in the red zone. Ever since running back coach Kennedy Polamalu has left, had a leave of absence, and now run game specialist Justin Outen and offensive assistant Michael Byrne have taken over, and what he's done over the last 2 games is really impressive in terms of his red zone work. He has 35 carries. Kenneth Walker has 31. Seems pretty split, but inside that red zone, he has 12 carries and 3 red zone targets with 3 touchdowns. Walker, like I said, 31 carries, but he has just 2 red zone carries and none from the 10 and in a game where they're going to run, a game where this game script predicts that they should be scoring more so than their other team, their opponent. I do like Zach Charbonnet, who has dominated the red zone work of late, and who wants to see that quarterback get fancy in the red zone. It's going to be pretty conservative, I think, play calling when they get inside the 20.
Okay, 7-0 Seattle in that one. That way we can both win our bets with Charbonnet, of course, scoring the touchdown for the Seahawks. Okay, to Sunday we go, up to New England with the Texans in town. And I'm going to go right back to the well on a bet I made last week. It is the first half under, the number sitting there at 20.5. Why do I like this bet so much? Well, because it's been absolute money in Texans games this season. They are 8-1 to the first half under in road games this season. For those games, saw an average of just 14.6 combined first half points. You got to love that both of these defenses are maybe coming off their best games of the season in the wild card round. New England held the Chargers to just 6 points. Pittsburgh only scored, I think it was 3 points in that one, actually. And Pittsburgh only scored 6 points at home versus Houston. So 6 sacks for the Patriots defense last week. This Houston offensive line, they're really going to have their hands full. As will CJ Stroud. He looked really bad under pressure in that Pittsburgh game, early in that game in particular. Now, the big question mark in this game is going to be, how does Drake May and this Patriots offense perform versus an elite defense? Because they haven't faced an elite defense yet this season. And I just like the Texans to continue that pattern of hot starts on the road. They allow a league low 5.4 first half points. I think that's going to continue, going to back this trend to continue. I think May and the Patriots offense might struggle a little bit in this one. Okay, a running back prop for this one. Who do you have targeted?
Back on the Ramondre Stevenson train this week. We're off the receiving yards, but this week we're on the receptions. Over 2.5 plus money, plus 115. Time of recording. He's topped his receiving yard total in 6 straight weeks. As I mentioned last week, his receiving role is growing, especially with them trying to get Henderson more carries. But that number did move from 13.5 last week to 20.5 this week, while his over 2.5 receptions was over 2.5 last week plus money. So I'm going to go the volume route. He has a route share similar to any of the New England wide receivers, and his snap share actually increased last week, where we saw 4 of Henderson's 9 carries come in the last 2 drives of the game. Hot hand, got to feed him. 281 total yards in his last 2 games, 2 plus receptions in each of his last 6, 18 total catches, averaging 3 per game. The blitz projecting 25 receiving yards, 2.6 receptions. And as you mentioned, Joe, the matchup works perfectly. Houston's not going to give you time to throw the ball. Houston's also not going to let you complete passes attempt versus this defense. That's the 3rd lowest in all football. Aaron Rodgers last week, 13 of 16 balls traveling 6 or fewer yards. Further than that, 4 for 15. Drake May's going to have to really involve Ramondre Stevenson in the passing game. We saw him rip off that big one last week. I think they're going to go back to him, and I think they trust him a little more than Travion Henderson, who I don't think his usage is going to be up if this game stays tight.
Okay, let's go to Chicago with the Rams in town to take on the Bears. Very entertaining looking game. I've been giving out a lot of unders on the show here so far today. Not the case for this one. Give me the over with the total down to 48.5. So 2 really sketchy defenses here right now. The Rams, all of a sudden, people thought they were one of the better defenses in the NFL for the first 10 weeks or 12 weeks or so. They're allowing an average of 30 points over their last 5 games, while Chicago's defense has just been sketchy all season, 29th in yards allowed per play. This might be a game where we see the Bears defense break, going up against a Rams offense that's capable of dropping 30 points on anyone. They average a league high 30.7 points per game. And I think they're going to be able to take advantage of this defense that's totally reliant on turnovers. Packers dropped 421 yards of offense on them in the losing effort for them last week. Now, the Bears have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. I don't like their chances against Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Devontae Adams. I think they're going to be able to move the ball with ease against them. As for the Bears offense, only 3 points scored in the first half last week. Maybe we get it. Finally, we'll get a complete game out of them, at least a more balanced game from them this time around. The Rams allowed the Panthers to drop 62 points on them in 2 separate games here, of course, last week and back in late November. Their defense is completely falling apart. Yeah, it's going to be cold in Chicago. Guess what? It was cold in Chicago last week, too, against the Packers. I love this number inside of 50. Give me the over 48.5. Okay, last pick for this segment here, Jingles, Devontae Adams. What do you like for him?
Over 4.5 receptions, plus 105 time recording, 80% route share last week for an offense that went back to its traditional ways of running 3 wide receiver sets and 11 personnel. They didn't have Adams. Parkinson was in, Tyler Higbee was out, and they were running a lot of 3 tight end sets. Well, now they're going back to the Sean McVay bread and butter system. I know he only caught 5 balls last week, but Devontae Adams had 13 targets. That is crazy quiet. He finished with 72 yards. The only other wide receiver to get more targets in the wild card round was his teammate Puka Nacua. It took him a little while to kick the rust off. He missed some games coming in. 3 receptions, 58 yards in the second half. And as you mentioned, Joe, the Bears pass defense, brutal. 287 yards allowed on 19 catches, 4 touchdowns to Green Bay wide receivers last week with over 300 air yards. Devontae Adams, 4+ catches in 13 of 15 games. This floor, super high, and he's a big red zone target. He's the shortest guy to score a touchdown in this offense for a reason, because he's that red zone target. He didn't get one last week. Could see some more. The projection from covers over there: 4.91 receptions, 66 receiving yards. His total receiving yards is at 53.5. That over looks good. And just one more thing on Adams. He was on with Kay Adams on Tuesday. Mentioned once a Packer, always a Packer. So I'm not sure that the F the Packers sentiment coming out of the Chicago locker room is sitting well with him coming into a cold game.
Oh, baby. Shout out to Kay Adams. Okay, that's it for Jingles. Now let's throw to the interview I did with John Middlekauff. All right, joining us now to discuss the latest news around the league and best bets for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs is our guy from the 3 and Out podcast, John Middlekauff. And John, I don't think we could have asked for a better wildcard weekend. A lot of highlights for some, a lot of big-time lowlights for others. Who would you pinpoint as the individual biggest loser and biggest winner out of the weekend?
Well, I think it's a tie for loser, and you might have to give it to Sirianni over LaFleur. I mean, anytime that you have a 21-3 lead, you're playing the Bears, who, it's weird, they're arch rivals, even though the Packers have owned them. But, like, the Bears might just be touched from the football gods this year. Sirianni and the Eagles going into that game against a team on the 49, we talk a lot about their defense. They were throwing it to guys. Number 81, I'd never even heard of the player. I've grown up watching the 49ers for 30 plus years. Kyle Shanahan, after the game, pointed to Eric Kendricks and was like, thanks so much for joining us over the last month. I mean, Brady said on the broadcast, 6th, 7th, and 8th linebackers right now. They're dead last in sacks. Like, we make a lot of fun of the Jets for not having an interception. Rightfully so. It's borderline impossible to do. Being dead last in the sacks is typically an indicator for a bad team, and especially an atrocious defense. But Robert Saleh and those guys, and Kyle, I mean, the timing of the play call, I just think that one, I get he's the defending champion. But when you're playing a game at home against a bunch of nobodies, and Purdy throws you multiple interceptions, I just don't think it gets any worse. I think that by far is the worst loss. Like, the Jags were, you could argue, the hottest team in the league, but they lost to Josh Allen. It's like, it happens. I remember the Sacramento Kings had this great season. Then they played Steph Curry, right? So I think it has to go to Sirianni. Because even like Tomlin on Monday night, it's like, yeah, he was an underdog in that game. Okay, no one thought they were going to win beside the Sharps, who all lost money.
Okay, biggest winner. Are you going to go with Superman, Josh Allen, or what are they calling them now? Mr.
Yeah,
Ice,
a lot
Caleb
like Sirianni
Williams.
and yeah, I would say tied for those two guys. I mean, the Caleb moment, that throw, you and I, we've all been watching football for a long time. 4th and 8, as a right-handed quarterback to make that throw. I mean, I would say I've been including Herbert in this. Only Josh, Herbert, and Caleb could make that throw. But the way Herbert played in that game, it may be just Josh and Caleb right now.
Yeah.
So that was pretty bad. I mean, those quarterbacks, the difference was Josh all game long. You know, that was incredible because the Jags, listen, I don't know if Tony Romo knows their team well because he doesn't call their games, but for those of us that sit on our couch and watch, even if you try to diminish the Jags, and I do sometimes, not this season, but just on a yearly basis, like I don't really have to watch them, you had to pay attention. And let's face it, that Denver game, we were all watching, and that was kind of their national coming out party. Like, this team's really good. Well, what happened in that game? It kind of came down to Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen. And one guy was a Hall of Fame level all-time great player, and the other one felt like he was resorting back a little bit, balls flying into harm's way. He didn't play that well. And I'd also say, Liam Cohen in that moment, one thing you see with these offensive coaches, McVay, even Ben Johnson, and obviously Liam Cohen, they kind of get pass happy. It's like sometimes you'll look at the box score. It's like, Liam, your team's averaging over 6 yards a carry. Just give it to your backs. Your quarterback's shaky. Josh Allen, they would give it to Cook 20 more times if they could, but he's not going anywhere. If they were gaining yards, if it had been flipped, that's the thing with these great quarterbacks, Brady, Manning, they are like, they don't discriminate. They would have no problem giving Cook 30 carries if he's going to gain 150 yards. And sometimes these coaches get away from that. Like Sean, Kieran Williams, Blake Corum, these guys are running well in this game. Stafford's a little erratic, but these young coaches, especially McVay, who I think gets paired with Shanahan, who, much like Ben Johnson, I think their ideal game is like 45 runs and 25 pass attempts. I think Ben would be the first to say, like, we don't want to have the ratio we had. I think it was like 28 carries to 48 pass attempts, but they were down 21-3. The game kind of dictated it. They were kind of desperate. But I think Sean McVay, he's Andy Reid. Like he's a great coach, but he wants to throw it 50 times a game. And I think you got it. That's looking at these games coming up. You're going to Denver, in Chicago, Seattle in the rain. Like this is, I love the warmth. I know, you live in a cold weather place. These football games in the winter historically come down to like grit and toughness. And that's a big reason, talk about big winner. I mean, that was a pretty big moment for Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy, right?
Yeah.
Especially Brock driving that final drive, made some big plays with his legs and his arm.
Yeah, they overcame a lot just as they have done all season. Okay, before we get into these divisional round games, I want to get your thoughts on these 8 head coach openings. So I think of these 8 openings, these 8 teams looking for head coaches, I think most of them, if not all of them, would have John Harbaugh at number 1 on their list. Where do you think he ends up?
It's a great question. I think any time that an owner shows up at your house to talk to you, as Chris Mara did the other day, and it's weird. Chris is like also a personnel guy. He's kind of got like a Jerry Jones thing going. He's John's brother. Like he owns the team. I think that's a bad sign for Joe Shane. And that's a shit sign that the Giants, who should be extremely desperate to get this right? From Shermer to McAdoo to Joe Judge. I mean, Daboll had a moment, but it didn't obviously not go that well. They're drafting in top 5, it feels like, every year. I think they should do everything possible to get John Harbaugh on the job, because I think clearly when you talk about resume, he's the most established guy that immediately gives you a chance. And he doesn't jump around as much as his brother, but look at Jim. Everywhere he goes, just immediately gets good. So I think if you're Atlanta, I mean, they have big money with the owner, and they have players. And I think if you're John, like the NFC, I think the job openings are a little more intriguing than like Cleveland, or to me, if he went to Miami, it would be kind of like a hybrid retirement gig. Yeah, I know you're a Dolphins fan, but I think it's very, very difficult to win there in this modern age of players with the money, with the nightlife. New York, you're like, well, New York's got nightlife, or LA. Well, LA everywhere closes early. New York, none of them live in the city. It's a different animal, and it's kind of proven now over the course. And the weather thing is a big factor. I think to me, New York makes a lot of sense. I would say Atlanta would be the sleeper, and then it's a lot of Stefanski's. Saleh, I think, I think it's aged pretty well with the Jets. I mean, right? Everyone leaves, and it's like, might not have been their fault. He's clearly a really high level guy and just an impressive motivator, obviously from a scheme guy. But the other thing as a head coach, what you would want is, well, any guy can get injured at any moment. Can you adapt? Right? And he's proven that with his unit this year. So I think that it pains me to say this as a Niner guy. Feels like a lock that gets like multiple offers, right?
I agree. I think he earned that with that performance that they had against the Eagles. So at the time of this recording, we still have 8 openings, a lot of openings. I don't really think a whole lot of quality candidates, though, here, John. We got guys like Jason Garrett and Cliff Kingsbury getting interviews. What do you think? It'd be different if there was 4 openings, but there's 8 spots that need to get filled here. How do you feel about the quality of the candidates, and do you think some teams are just going to get screwed over, essentially just throwing a dart and picking the best of the rest, I guess you could say?
Well, I think most years, let's use Mike McDaniel as an example. I think on a given year with good candidates and a little more established guys in the market, like last year, he would be a lock OC candidate. And a lot like Saleh could do a year or 2 transition back. But how many jobs has he interviewed? Every time I look up, 4. He's interviewing somewhere else. So it's like, he's not. I would probably guilty of this too. It was probably unfair the way people made fun of him. I mean, you see some of these players come out. I saw Armstead on a podcast, might be his own podcast, really defend him. Clearly, he's a good offensive mind. I mean, the Tua situation, I don't, he didn't draft him. He was probably a proponent of paying him. But, to me, if Mike McDaniel gets a head coaching job, that kind of shows you, Matt Nagy feels like a lock for the Titans. Anytime that you're dealing with just like, yeah, this coordinator's kind of interesting. Kubiak's been a coordinator now for what, 2 years? Last year with the Saints, which obviously fell off the rails. And this year, like, Seattle's a defensive team, guys. I know Darnold's resurrected his career, but Darnold's season this year is not Darnold's season last year, right? What Kevin O'Connell did with them. Now, you could argue they have more weapons, but he led the league in turnovers. Like, I don't view Kubiak as like, oh, he's just the next Kyle Shanahan. He might be, and I'm not anti-Kubiak, but my point is, I saw a lot of people saying like he's probably going to have a choice between a couple jobs. So the college guys, right? Marcus Freeman and any of those type guys. Harbaugh had already made the jump. I just don't see. Vrabel was one of those classic, like a no-brainer, was out of work. That guy doesn't exist. And it's just kind of that's why John Harbaugh, if this was like, when we talk about the draft, you're like, this guy would be a number one pick in any draft. John Harbaugh in any coaching cycle would turn down jobs if he didn't want to work, right? He would get offered. But in this job, he feels like Bill Walsh or Bill Parcells or something, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So I do think Saleh, when you factor in the personality, inspirational, like how good he is with players, has a lot of the qualities of Vrabel, of the Harbaugh brothers, of Dan Campbell. I feel like he's a lock. The Raiders, honestly, he would make, especially a young quarterback. Now the problem with doing that is like then he becomes very dependent on the coordinator, and if Mendoza in a couple of years is crushing whoever his version is of LaFleur or McDaniel, who knows? Maybe he tries to pair himself up with a McDaniel. That guy leaves. That's the only issue with hiring the defensive guy / Saleh Harbaugh. That's the one thing with Vrabel, right? Josh McDaniels never getting a head coaching job again. Not in the NFL. Maybe college, would hire like Rutgers or something. But if Josh McDaniels could just work there forever, making millions of dollars coaching Drake May, which he might. He did it for Brady and had a great time.
Okay, John, let's rip through these divisional round games. Now, you pinpointed 2 best bets, but I want to get your thoughts on each of the games. We start things off on Saturday afternoon here, and all of a sudden, there's a lot working against the Buffalo Bills. Now, I think a lot of people, if you don't have a horse in the race and you're just hoping for a good Super Bowl, a lot of people are going to hope to see Josh Allen get through. Very entertaining guy, great story. Everyone knows the history about the Buffalo Bills losing 4 straight Super Bowls, but they got a lot working against them. So Josh Allen's beat up. He's down a receiver. They're playing on a day less rest coming into this game as well. They kind of got screwed over a little bit there with the schedule making, taking on Denver, who's obviously had the bye. Tough environment, tough defense. Which way do you lean in this game?
I think you just saw with the Bears. I mean, it took miraculous things to happen in the fourth quarter for them to win that game. It's happened twice. And Denver's had some of those moments, obviously, this season as well. But in a playoff game, this is not a 7-game series. Sometimes the magic doesn't happen. And you find yourself down 14-3 or, 20-10 heading into the fourth quarter. All of a sudden, that magical drive ends on a 3-and-out. And you're playing the best player in the league when he's on. So, listen, if you flip the 2 quarterbacks, people would be betting the spread would be like 14 points, right? Hell, it might be like 20 points. But that's not the way it works. And I do think the momentum of that win, I mean, Jacksonville, I don't know if you'd agree. You could argue if we were doing a ranking going into the playoffs, they would have been right there with Seattle to be like the number 1 team in the country. How well, because it wasn't just like, oh, you're beating up on the Colts. They played Denver and they killed them.
Straight wins. Yeah.
And, Josh, and they might be more, Denver's defense is fast, but Jacksonville, the physicality of their defense, like, Josh got into the ring there with the Mike Tyson or a Holyfield. Now he gets a little bit more of like a Floyd Mayweather, which I think he kind of likes, So I think there's a good spot. The other thing is the Bills, one advantage they have, and this is why I think he's played well against the Chiefs in Kansas City. They play in Buffalo. So it's like, what, Denver's going to be cold? I just saw some of my neighbors this morning at the dog park. They're from Colorado, and they're like, yeah, it was 62 degrees today. So it could, obviously it can change there, but it's not, it'll probably be warmer for them in Denver than what they practice in this week, I would guess.
Absolutely. Okay, so game number 2 here, the San Francisco 49ers, they continue to suffer about an average of 1 devastating injury per game. No George Kittle for them in this one. They're a 7.5-point underdog taking on the Seahawks. Now, these teams played just a couple of weeks ago. The Seahawks really outplayed them in that game. Spread was only 2.5 in that one, although it was in San Francisco. You like the 49ers, biggest underdog of the weekend. You like them to cover this spread.
Yeah, I mean, you get burned once. I didn't think they had a chance against Philadelphia, and I was proven wrong. And there are some similarities with Seattle and Philly. Seattle's offense hasn't been that great from a passing game standpoint. Like over the aggregate of the season, Jackson's had a great year, but they can be very hit or miss. Now, running the ball, they will stick with it. I mean, that is a Kubiak thing, and they shredded the 49ers. Right, their two running backs against the Niners a couple weeks ago went, I think, for 170 yards because they ran for 180, and 10 of those were Darnold. I just think there's a lot of points. Tough spot for the Niners. I mean, they get screwed time-wise to have to play Saturday night. Now, it's a much easier travel to stay on the West Coast, but I'm just going to take the 7.5 and just ride the hot hand of Purdy, McCaffrey. The Kittle thing is a pretty big blow. And the other thing to watch this week is, Trent, typically a hamstring injury, a pulled hamstring is a month, especially a bigger guy who's older. He clearly wasn't 100% toughed it out. Like, can he even walk right now? That would be something to keep an eye on because he didn't play in that Seattle game. And obviously that was a problem against, their pass rushers, where if you noticed during the Eagles game, you looked at 71, like you just run into him, he can just hold you. And just have him out there he's one of the greatest players in like the history of the league. So even with a hurt hammy and at 37 years old, he's really, really, and I think his presence just walking out gives them a big boost. Kittle does too, but you saw Juszczyk. The one thing with the 49ers is just a lot of these guys, McCaffrey's been there for a while, obviously Purdy, Juice, Trent, Lenore. The 49ers defensive backs aren't that bad. Stout, the little nickel corner's good. Lenore's good. So they just have to kind of somehow neutralize Cooper Kupp and obviously Jackson Smith and just sell out on the run. Because I think that's what they did against the Eagles. And just be like, okay, Sam, beat us.
A lot of core guys. Okay. Game number 3 into Sunday. We have the Patriots hosting the Texans. Patriots are favored by 3. This is the lowest total of the weekend. No surprise, 40.5 points. Now, the big knock on the Patriots all season has been that they've had a really light schedule. Not their fault. All you can do is play the schedule that's in front of you. They played some good teams. We know that they split the games against the Bills. They had a nice win against the Ravens there. I think it was a Sunday Night Football game later in the season. But if you look up and down their schedule, they haven't really played a really good defense yet this season. Now they're getting one with the Houston Texans at home. Which way would you lean in this game?
Well, if the Texans do what they just did, they'll win that game because they will smother Drake May. And it's not just their physicality, it's their team speed, him running around. There were times in that game where Khalil Mack was shoving Will Campbell, the number 4 overall pick, into the backfield. I don't remember like Lawrence Taylor in his prime, but 55 last night, Daniil Hunter looked like it doesn't get much better than this in an individual game. And Will Anderson is one of the brightest young stars in the league. And then you factor in their D tackles are good, their linebacker plays great, and they got great DBs. I like Houston in this spot. I really do. I thought they proved a lot last night playing in this weird, ugly game. Their quarterback was horrendous. 4 fumbles in the first half, loses a couple of them. The flea flicker is not his fault. Like, that's a dumb play call in the first quarter. To me, isn't a flea flicker after you've established the run so everyone bites on it? Don't you usually run that play later in the game? But to me, I'm just betting on like, hey, and this is the problem. The one thing that makes me nervous is like Drake May knows his role. Like, I'm kind of got to be a star for this team because they need me, right? I can't just be a game manager. I got to make plays with my legs. I got to throw bombs. Like CJ, they need you to be Brad Johnson or Trent Dilfer. But CJ's like, I'm the number 2 overall pick. I'm Ohio State star. We don't need you to play like that, man. We can't turn the ball over. You see our defense? They could beat anybody. So I'm just going to bet on CJ playing a little more under control. Obviously, I'm sure Nico Collins is not going to play, but Christian Gonzalez could be out too. So you could argue that cancels each other out. And I'm just, this D-line, D-lines like that traveled in any climate. And they just played outside and they were unfazed. I can't get over how good Daniil Hunter still is. He's a monster.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about game number 4. I think the most exciting game of the weekend, the highest total. It's inside of 50 now. I think it opened at 51 and a half. It's down to 49 and a half. I don't know, maybe some weather or something in Chicago, but we have the Rams favored by 3.5. Now, they're not playing their best football of the season. Far from it. Meanwhile, the Bears, they are never out of a game. And you like the Bears catching 3.5 points on their home field.
I'm just not betting against them anymore. Not doing it. I just
Smart.
refuse. Now maybe they used up all their good juju in that fourth quarter. Which the one thing cool about the Bears being back is their home games are really fun. At night, the crowd, it kind of feels like an SEC football game. Uh, the Rams, I bet a lot of people weren't super dialed in. I was because I got no life. But watching that Cardinal game a couple weeks ago with Jacoby just slicing and dicing them, and Wilson looking like he was Larry Fitzgerald in his prime, I went, McVay had this look on his face. I told Coward the other day, it looked like he was ready to, like, should I call Amazon back and say, might be ready? Because my team is not good enough. Something's off. And defensively, their pass rush is not as dominant. Their DBs are just somewhat limited, and their special teams at any given moment can do the dumbest thing you'll ever see. I mean, that block punt, he barely even touched him. He just Isaiah Simmons is like sick. Listen, Isaiah Simmons overdrafted, doesn't really have a position, but he is like 6'4", 230 and ran like a 4.4. You know, if any guy can get pretty quickly to the punter, it's a guy with that length and speed. So it's like, do you guys do scouting reports on who's coming off the edge here? The Rams make me nervous. Obviously, Stafford's banged up finger. The one thing, though, the Bears struggle with is covering a soul. And Puka Nacua, it's like a running back physicality mixed with Jerry Rice. I don't even think we've ever seen a player like him. Obviously, Devontae, their tight ends are good, the running backs. So Stafford can, if he plays well, obviously the Rams can win this game. But if he plays like he's playing, a little up and down, I think this thing could get weird really fast.
Okay, John, we'll leave it at that for today. Great spot per usual. Enjoy all the games this weekend. Best of luck with your bets, and we will catch you ahead of the championship round.